Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. Today's video we're going to discuss this. This is RIDGID's cordless 18-volt sliding miter saw, and this is their 7¼ inch blade. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dan Shannon. I enjoy woodworking as a hobby and being out in the shop. On this channel, dive deep into my shop as we explore tools and tool reviews, as well as chatting about everything related to woodworking. If this grabs you by the tool belt, please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. In this video, we're going to jump into this. This is RIDGID's 7¼ inch blade cordless, and this is their brushless edition sliding miter saw. So in today's video, we're going to go through the features. So basically from side to side, what the saw can do, what it's capable of. Then we'll jump into some hands-on. So can it cut? Is it accurate? All that, and then we'll jump into some final thoughts in the end. Would I buy the saw again? Is it good enough for your shop if you're doing any woodworking? So let's jump into the model number. This is model number R48607B. So we're going to jump into the features right now of this tool, and then hands-on, and then final thoughts. And if you hear some noise in the background, my neighbor's doing some construction next door, so just be mindful of that, and appreciate you're bearing with me on this video. So let's jump into the features. Okay, so let's go over the features of this tool. There's quite a bit to cover. I'll do my best to explain each thing as best I can so that you can get a great idea on this tool and what it's capable of. So we'll start with the front. You have your adjustment locking knob here. There is a little button under here, so you have to raise the guard to access it, and you just push on the button here, pull this up, and then move the saw from side to side. So there is some locking presets along the way. You have 0 degrees. You can check on the scale here: 0, 15, 30, 45, and then there's some smaller increments: 31.4, 22.5. So depending on your cut and your angle, you can adjust this to the proper setup. All right, so that's basically it. This one does not have a adjustment piece, whereas the 10 and the 12 corded one, there is an auto lockout, so you don't have to press this button anymore on the corded versions, but this one does not have that. So I just wanted to give you that note. So if you're looking for that feature, this does not have that. All right, so we will slide this to the other side, and if you notice here, you have a nice clear guard. It does have 2 rollers on it to allow it to glide over the stock that you'll be cutting. I mentioned it was a 7¼ inch blade. This has a really thin kerf on it. This is a RIDGID blade. I will be upgrading to a Diablo or Freud blade as soon as I can. There's nothing wrong with the cut on here. You'll see when we get into the cutting performance, but I just find the factory blades are not the greatest. Also here there's a Allen key piece, so you can loosen that for your blade, and I'll just try to drop this so you can see that, and you just loosen it with the onboard tool, which is actually built into the handle on the back side. there is the Allen key. So you just put that into the arbor bolt, and then on the back side you hold that in, and then you loosen the arbor bolt, and that'll take your blade off if you're not familiar with how to remove the blade on these units. Alright, so we'll go up top. I'll show you kind of what's up here. So you have your trigger. This is a safety. You push that in and then pull the trigger, which will fire on the saw. This is a LED light, so you can fire that up. That will give you a shadow line. It is not a laser. It is just covering the blade, so it sits in the center of the blade, the light, and it shines down along the blade to give you a nice shadow line for your stock. So that's really cool. If you do not want to press this button, that's fine. As soon as you pull the trigger, it will light up that LED light. On the back side of the trigger, you'll notice that's where the shoe is for the battery. I have a 6 amp hour on here. You can use any of RIDGID's batteries for this tool, so you don't have to use the 6 amp hour. You can use whatever you want. This does say brushless on the back head, and of course your information for your tool is right here. So when you register it, the model number, serial number, etc., you pull that off there to register. And on the back side, let's kind of turn this around a little bit. You have your handle, which I showed you where the tool fits on the back side. I love that about RIDGID tools. They have the built-in adjustment tools for their saws, so you don't have to scramble around your toolkit to find that. So you can pick it up this way, or there's handles on either side to pick it up from. This is your arm, of course, for your guard, so that'll move freely. And of course your dust collection bag is on the back. It does a pretty good job, but it's not 100%. You're better off removing this and putting a dust collection port to your vacuum or dust collection system would be a better bet. And here we have a clamp. So basically you have your stock, you're getting ready to cut. You just take this, put it on your stock, and then of course do the adjustment to tighten it down so that it does not move when you're cutting. So that's a great safety feature there. This here is an adjustment for the fence. So basically you can see here it's at a really good 45-degree angle, which when you have this angled, you do not want it to cut the material, but to bring that in to make a 90-degree cut, you just loosen this bolt here, and then this just slides over, and then you set your saw, of course, to the 90 degrees, and then there's your fence extended over, so it gives your stock a really good solid backing. And the same with the opposite side, a 45 right now, and there's an adjustment knob on the back side. You just loosen it, slide your fence over, and then you have a nice backing for your 90 degrees. The issue with this, well, not issue per se, but it does have a caution here. If you're cutting at a bevel, you definitely don't want the fence all the way over, or else you'll actually cut into it, which is very dangerous. So I always want to make sure I always put mine back at the end of the day, just so I don't run into that. But it's just a cautionary thing for you to remember when you're cutting 45s. All right, so I will get into the backhand side of this saw. We kind of covered the handle, the different adjustments on the front, the different bevels and angles with the saw. Make sure you lock it in place when you're done so that it doesn't wander. You do have a needle here to give you the precise reading, and I would recommend always to take a piece of stock, put it on the saw when you first get it, do your cutting, and then double check it to make sure it is 100% accurate. Okay, so you can see now, moving on, you can see now the saw is locked. We can't raise it up, we can't slide it forward. So where are the buttons for that? All right, let's spin around to this side. This is the unlocking knob. You just bring that down, pull this pin out, and it releases the top of the saw, so it will spring up. So there is the saw fully sprung, and then of course your sliders. In order to make the saw go back and forth on the rails, you just unloosen this, and that will move the saw back and forth. Very easy, very smooth. You can always, it's not recommended to put much grease in here. It comes from the factory with really nice grease on it, so it is quite smooth. But if you notice over time it's starting to be rough, you might want to spray a little bit of grease on there or clean it. You can get some sawdust build up, as you can see there, over time, and that'll get inside and cause a little friction. But for the most part, I would say you know, it's quite free moving with no issues. All right, so let's go to the back side now that we figured out how to unlock and then unlock your slider. As we get to the backhand side of the saw, I'll bring it in. You have these two needles on either side, and that starts off at 0, so you're 90 degree, and then you can move it to 15, 30, and then 45. So in order to do that, you just loosen this back dial, which will take the pressure off the center here, and then you can just move the saw back and forth. This pivots it to the right, so you can see there it is to the right hand side. I will spin the saw around so you can see there it says 45, and that is the first needle, and that's always to the right hand side. And if you want to do the left hand side, there is a needle that will govern that. So in order to do that, that's a bit more tricky. Right here, that you pull out, and that will move the saw to the opposite side, so you can angle it to, so depending on what you're cutting on your saw, you can do left or right, and you have to pull this pin out to move it to the left. But the right hand side is just automatically loose, or you could keep this pin out full time and the saw will just go back and forth without any worries. Well, I can't really physically do that, I have to be kind of in front here, so bear with me. So you can just freely move it now, side to side, no issues, no obstructions. And then what's kind of neat on this saw that's not on my other saw is it has stops. So if you want to get very precise, there is a bunch of different stops on here. There's the 45, 33.9, and 48. So depending on what you're doing for your cuts, you just line that up, and then as this head pivots, it'll stop right here on this blunt edge. So it acts as a stop block, more or less, to give you more of a precise measurement or precise cut. And then once you get to that point, so we'll move it to the 45, and then we'll just slide the saw over. See there that it stops on that block. So that's really cool. I like that feature. It's very precise when it comes to getting your correct measurement. And once I said, remember what I said about this pin, make sure that that is pulled out to slide it to the right, or else you won't be able to. You can only do to the left. So I'm not sure why they did that, maybe so it doesn't accidentally go too far. All right, so that's there is one more feature. So if you're doing a dado cut, this is a stopper for that. So you just slide this tab over, and this is your adjustment for your depth. So you just bring the saw down, get the height of the blade that you want, and then bring it into your stock. So that's really cool that you can do a stop for dados. Just do your adjustment, and this will of course create your depth for your blade into your material. So yeah, I think that is pretty much it on the saw. As far as features go, I did mention about there's 2 handles to pick it up, and make sure this is locked in the lock feature. You also have your crown molding information, so depending on what you're cutting, your different inside bevels, outside, etc. So that's pretty neat. But kind of a close-up of what it looks like, and kind of the features. Also, make sure your knob on the back is tightened again when you're done getting whatever adjustments. Just make sure that's nice and tight. And we'll jump into some hands-on. I'll show you what this is like cutting boards and how it performs. So let's jump into that now. Okay, so let's get into the hands-on of this saw. I got my battery. I'm using a 6 amp hour. You can use 2, 4, 6, 12, whatever you have lying around. That's RIDGID. It doesn't really matter. They all work the same. I want to make sure this is locked in. My lock is undone, and also my slider is good for my cuts. So you just want to make sure your saw is set up exact way that you want to cut. So the first piece of material we're going to put through is a 2x4. This is you can see it's stamped, so this is something you'd have at the hardware store. Now, probably noticed right off the bat, I didn't mention this in the features. I wanted to see, or show you rather, a more visual in the cutting. This rubber piece below, since this is only a 7¼ inch blade, for the dust collection system, if you're cutting something that's thinner, say this piece of stock here, very thin, you don't have to worry about this rubber piece because it's very thin. But if you are cutting something thicker, like this 2x4 or 2x6, you will notice this rubber piece will catch. Well, RIDGID designed this so that this is removable. So you just start on the right hand side, pull off this tab, pull from the back, and then this back, and then this front, or this piece comes out through the front. So there's a view of the rubber piece once it's pulled off. I thought it was really cool because a lot of times you might be cutting smaller stuff and you want the dust to all go into the dust collection system, but other times you have a bigger piece, and like I said, with the smaller blade, they had to figure out a way so that you can remove this rubber piece. So now that that's removed, we can go ahead and make our first cut. So got the saw. My dad always taught me when you're cutting, just as a safety thing, just have your hands back obviously, but when you cut, you do like a relief cut on the top of the board. You don't have to, but it definitely cuts down on the motor, taking a little bit less material off that. And when you're cutting, you'll have less tear out on the top of your board. So just kind of a nice tip there. So let's fire it up and go make a cut. So I'll just show you the clamp feature. I did not use it for this cut because I have quite a bit and I didn't find it was drifting too much, but if you do find that, you can change this, slide it down, and then tighten it up. So make sure that's tight to the fence, and then of course clamp it down. That way your stock isn't going anywhere when you make the cut, and it's precise. And I'd probably use that more finished boards that I really wanted to not worry about, but I'm not sure if this would make an indent or not. You might want to watch those rubberized material on the clamp, so it should be non-marking, but just keep an eye on that if you are using that for finished product. Alright, so let's slide the clamp out of the way here and make sure that's in the back. I'll do with the 2x4 I'll do a 45 cut on the back. So in order to bring it to the right, I have to pull that pin in the back like I mentioned before. So just slide the pin out. First I'll loosen the knob on the back side, slide the pin out. You might not, like I had to pull the pin, but sometimes it's a little hard, so you might have to actually turn the saw a little bit to release the pressure on that back pin. So don't think you broke it or something happened if you can't pull that out right away. Just kind of move the head of the saw and that will free that up. So I can bring mine all the way to the 45. You can see here it says 45. Make sure your fence is backed all the way up. So just loosen that bolt. Make sure the fence is very clear out of the way. Back it up all the way. And you can also double check by bringing it down and making sure it has no issues with the fence. So I will adjust that. That's in the clear. It's not in the clear yet. Something I just found out that I didn't know, which was actually nice to have it recorded, was this fence here. On the back side, the battery will actually hit it. So let me spin you around, show you what I'm talking about. So I had the fence on the saw, and normally you can just move the fence all the way and tighten it up. But in this case, you can see there the battery will actually hit the fence on this side. So you have to remove it completely. So bring it back, pull it all the way off, and then you're free to make the cut on this side. So that's quite interesting. Normally you can just give it a little room and you're fine. But on the right hand side, when you're cutting a 45, you need to remove the fence completely, not just slide it off to the side just to give you that 45. All right, so figured that out. I don't usually cut the 45 on the right. I normally cut on the left. For some reason, I'm always used to doing that. So maybe that's why I've never really looked into taking the fence off. That's not an issue with the corded, but with the cordless, obviously, we just found out that it is a thing. So I'm going to make sure that's locked in. Okay, so we're going to take this board here. It's a little bit crowned it's from outside, so it's kind of rough lumber. And we're just going to do the 45 on the right. And I did notice with the 2x4, if you're trying to cut a 45, the blade will not go all the way through because it's only 7¼ inch blade. So I just wanted to show you that, let you know that that's not an option because the blade is only 7¼ inch and it will not cut a 2x4 at the angle. Now you can turn the saw to the 45 and flip your board upright and cut it to give you that same cut when you're out cutting boards, but as far as getting the 45 from this particular angle, you cannot do that. Okay, so in a pinch, if you have to cut for framing, not accuracy, if you have to cut a 2x4 and do a 45 on the end, you can do a cheat way by flipping your stock over. And what I mean by that is you just line it up 45, bring your saw down, and then move your saw to the opposite 45, and then flip your stock around, making sure your line is there. So you'll take a pencil, you just bring your pencil line up, use a straight edge just to make sure it's nice and accurate best you can. I mean, it is rough, right? So it's not the end of the world. And then that would be your line there that you work with. And then once you have that done, you just line it up on the saw and continue your cut. So, like I said, it's not 100% accurate. You can see there, I mean, if I would have taken my time and have a little bit more accurate of a cut there, but in a pinch, if you just need to cut that at a 45, that is something you can do on this saw, you know, if you take your time and be precise. So I'll show you there how this cuts a nice wide board. So you can see there, that cut that no problem. Like I said, there's a bit of a bow to the board, but no problem cutting that nice 45 on your stock for making different trim cuts. So that's it for the 45 on the back miter. Let's switch it and bring it back up to the 90 degree. So we just loosen in the back our knob here and then move the whole saw up, and then we can get it to the 90 degree again by pushing in that button on the back. Once that's in, you can slide it back to the right, and that's like a stop block so it doesn't keep going, so you know it's back to the 45 or the 90 degree rather, and then tighten up your knob again. So there is your straight 90 again. Alright, so now that we have the saw upright, let's do a 45 cut. So let's bring it over to the 45. You can use a clamp or not, it's up to you. Perfect. Got that no problem. You can see really good 45 joint. So that cut that no problem, with no issues at all. I should reattach my fence because I'm not doing a beveled edge there. So just line it up, and then I usually bring it back to make sure it's out of the way. And that's that. Alright, so we got one more board to cut. Just want to show you what a 2x6 looks like. And this is a rough cut 2x6, so it's actually a true 2x6 on the scale. You can see there it's pretty much bang on for size. So this is a full piece of stock, and it'll show you what it can cut. So this should be able to cut this no problem. I have it where I want it. Make sure this is locked in, and then double check your back knob, make sure that's tight too. And yeah, and then we can cut. Roller there. So as you can see, that is a perfect cut, and that is a lot of stock that just went through. No problem whatsoever with that. I will put the information on this saw for all the cuts that it can make, the different bevels and angled cuts. So I'll put that up next, just to give you an idea of what it can cut, bevel wise, angle wise, etc. So I'll throw that up next. So let's jump into some final thoughts on this saw. Okay, so some final thoughts on this saw that I've had for about a month now, and I've used. Would I recommend it for your shop? It is lightweight. It's only about 20 pounds, so depending on what you're doing in your shop or outside your shop, this is primarily focused, being cordless and all, to be into your home or into a project that you're doing for a customer. But its main purpose is portability, and that would explain the battery option. Now back here I do have a corded version. This is their 10-inch. This is their bigger version. So this would be my shop saw, and that's primarily what I'd use in the shop. But for moving around, I got a few projects coming up: kitchen reno, trim for my windows, a tree house I want to build for my kids. So this saw will be perfect for that. The only thing I'm leery about, and I've read a lot of things online, is the bearing in the saw. There is some oil leakage, a little bit. I don't know how much has happened because it was in a box, but there was a little bit underneath where the blade and the arbor is. So I'm just going to keep an eye on that. But if you register your tool with the LSA, you shouldn't have to worry about any issues with your tool. That would be an operational issue that would happen. So basically there's no concern as long as you're registered with the RIDGID website. So I'm not concerned at all if anything happens to this. I do have that RIDGID coverage. Would it be a saw for your shop? Basically have to weigh, what do you use it for? What would you use it for? The portability, the weight, the aspect that I kind of reached out, and the viewpoint that I had on this saw was I have a stand, and the one behind me weighs about 70 pounds, whereas this is only 20 pounds. So I can mount the cleat system or the track system, take this, snap it on my stand, wheel it around, do jobs around the house, and it's perfect for that. So that's the primary reason why I bought this saw, is portability. And do your research out there. Milwaukee, DeWalt, Makita, all of them have versions of this saw. So do some research out there to see whether this saw will cover all the bases that you're going to be using it for. And if not, one of those other brands, I'm sure will cover that. Thanks for watching today's video. I appreciate your views. Please give me a thumbs up, a like, and don't forget to click on that subscribe button down below if you'd like to be part of the Shop Talk family. Love to have you on board and talk shop, talk tools, really anything associated with woodworking. So thanks for tuning in, and have yourself a great day.